Dror Moreh is one of Israel's leading cinematographers and documentary filmmakers. His projects include The Rose, a documentary series about the murder of a young girl, Undercover, a 4-part docudrama about undercover police officers, and Sharon, a feature-length documentary about why Ariel Sharon implemented the Gaza disengagement plan. The Gatekeepers, his feature-length documentary, also shown as a TV series in Israel, a 5-hour series, revolves around intimate dialogues with 6 former heads of the Shin Bet, Israel's Secret Service. It was awarded the LA Film Critics Association Award, a PGA award, and was nominated for the Best Documentary Oscar. Appearing in conversation this evening with Dror Moreh is Peter Stein, Peabody Award-winning documentary producer, yes, writer and story consultant for media and performing arts projects, and former executive director of the San Francisco Jewish Film Festival. Please join me in welcoming Dror Moreh and Peter Stein to the JCCSF.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you all. And please, I know many of you just saw that powerful film, The Gatekeepers, so a very warm welcome and thank you to Dror Moreh.
Thank you.
Welcome back to San Francisco. It's such a powerful film, pretty stunning that you got the 6 directors of the Shin Bet, which is Israel's, I guess FBI is the best way to put it, internal security.
It's a combination between CIA and FBI. It's a hybrid, Israeli hybrid.
So the fact that you got all 6 directors to sit down with you and to be as candid as they were, first of all, maybe you can tell us, is there a culture of openness among the Shin Bet directors that that they welcomed a documentary maker into their midst? How public have they been up to?
I can tell you that when I said that I want to bring 6 heads of the Israeli Secret Service to speak, all my friends thought that I'm crazy, lunatic. They wanted to commit me to a psychiatric award. They didn't believe that they would speak, and they kind of said to me, you know, you're crazy. And I said, maybe I'm crazy, but maybe they will come, and let's try. It wasn't easy to persuade the persuaders to come and speak. It took a long time, but at the end, you see all of them. Even Yuval Diskin, by the way, Yuval Diskin was still active head of Shin Bet. The first 2 interviews, well, I conducted them at Fridays because Fridays was less hectic for him, in the headquarters of Shin Bet in Tel Aviv. He had a year before he finished his job.
So a few of them, I think 4, had kind of broken maybe a code of silence back in 2003 with a very critical article during the Sharon administration, which did kind of surprise people, I think, at that time. Can you talk a little bit about, at that time, what the 4 were concerned about back in 2003?
Actually, this was one of my sources of inspiration, or the idea to bring them to speak came also from that interview that they gave. When I did Sharon, the movie, I had a relationship with the Prime Minister, which I was the director of his campaign at 2000 and 2003. And Sharon, you know,
when you say the director of his campaign, what kind of campaign? A media campaign?
The campaign, he ran for prime minister against Ehud Barak after the collapse of the peace process in Camp David.
Right.
He ran for Barak, and there is a campaign in the television.
Television campaign.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure you were.
So I'm a veteran of the first Lebanon War. I didn't fight, but I was in the army while the first Lebanon War was. And friends of mine, actually classmates of mine, died in that war. So I had kind of an open account with Sharon. And when they offered me to come and do that campaign, I was very interested to do that because Sharon kind of personifies for every Israeli he was a kind of a mythological figure, you know, from the beginning of the 50s as the commander of the 101 legendary commando brigade and the hero of 1973, the outcasted of Sabra and Shatila. And I looked forward to meet him. I found out a very charming man with a great sense of humor. But when we kind of put the teleprompter in front of him to read, he didn't like that. His whole nose used to work more hours, you know, than he was really suffering from that. And then I said, let's do that with interviews. I will interview him. And I didn't give him, you know, easy time. I was very, very, you know, you are the father of settlement. How can we trust you that you will bring peace and all that kind of, and he liked that. And so in 2003, when the second campaign came, he wanted me to come again. And I said, okay, I will come, but I will come with a video camera. And since we did that all the time in his ranch, we had a lot of free time together. And I used to photograph conversation of me with him, just, you know, about everything. And those material accumulated in my closet. And when he got the second stroke, I was really, it was just before, 2 weeks before the election, or 3 weeks before the election, 2006, I was really, really looking forward to meet him. The last time that I met him was at the eve of the disengagement. I came to his office to supervise how he looks when he gives that speech to the nation about the disengagement.
This is the disengagement from Gaza.
From Gaza. Not only from Gaza. A lot of people saying that he disengaged from Gaza. He also disengaged. He also uprooted 4 settlements in Samaria, which was very important in my point of view because he indicated that there will be, is willing to do further steps, not only settle with Gaza that nobody wants. And regrettably, I didn't manage to meet him. He suffered from the second stroke, and I really wanted to speak to him about how did he come to this disengagement. I remember when we were joking during the campaign with his advisor about, he always said that for peace he's willing to do substantial concessions. And we used to joke that the most substantial concession that he will do if he will not eat 2 falafel, you know, or shawarma, which he loved very much. So this will be the most painful concession that he will do. And then I got into the period of interviewing his most closest advisors. And Dubi Weissglass said to me that the basic idea for the disengagement was presented at August 2002 in the ranch amongst his advisors and friends. And publicly it came out at December 2002. And he said, you know, there is a big gap between what you do in your close circle of friends and when you come as a policy of Israel. And few things have happened between August and December. One of them was the interview that you mentioned with 4 former heads of Shin Bet. Another thing was the pilot. There was a letter that ex-pilots in the Israeli army wrote, open letter, which resulted in the scene that you've seen in the movie, the dropping of the 1-ton bomb on Shhada, and they came and kind of questioned the morality of that act. And it added also to another protest of the elite unit in the Israeli army, Sayeret Matkal, which is the most elite commando unit in Israel. Also, veterans of that unit kind of doubted the morality of the occupation. And Dubi said to me that those, especially the interview with the 4 heads of Shin Bet, had a profound impact on Sharon. Because it came from the center of the defense establishment, not from what Sharon called those bleeding, whining liberals who were always kind of bleeding heart about the Palestinian. It came from people that he worked with, appreciated. Some of them, he did operation with. And it kind of moved him in a way, not that this was the only thing, for the going public with this disengagement. And I remember that lamp, blinking in my head when I heard that from Dubi, saying, if Sharon moved, if the 4 heads of the Israeli Secret Service, the Shin Bet, those small article that they gave, moved Sharon in acknowledging something, the most right-wing prime minister that ever sat on the prime minister chair in Israel, all of a sudden speaks about a Palestinian, the immorality of the occupation. What happened there?
So that, in a way, prompted you to think about, many years later, bringing these people and their voices to the Israeli public and also, I presume, internationally.
Yeah.
Did you have a sense that they would be as candid as they were? And tell us a little bit about were there conditions on the interviews? How did you prepare to ask some difficult questions?
Well, it's a good question, because how do you... Look, they interrogated me. Some of them wanted probably to do that with moderate physical pressure, but they couldn't do that. They interrogated me, it was conversations to understand what I wanted. And I'm always very, very open. And I never hide from the subject, that what I want to say and what will... Although it's and I believe in very long interviews. I mean, each one of them was interviewed around 12 hours in a few times. The toughest task was to persuade Avraham Shalom, the old guy, to stay with his same shirt for three interviews. And he was, by the way, the toughest guy to persuade to come to speak. He never spoke before, never. Definitely not on television.
He was not one of the four who had originally...
No, he was.
Avraham
Shalom was one of them. But he was never interviewed in full length for the television. And then, I thought very hard of how to conduct those interviews. And I prepared myself thoroughly. I had few researchers who researched deeply all the period of time that they were in the Shin Bet, their life story and everything. And I believe in conversation. I believe that an interview, especially with people like that, should be a conversation. It's not interrogation, it's a conversation. And there's a big difference between that technique. And I felt that I was privileged to speak to them, How often do you get to sit with 6 people that shaped my life or the life of Israel almost more than anybody else in terms of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and they tell you their life story, which is fascinating. And so it was a conversation. I always used to have 40 pages of question. Normally, at the end of the interview, I reached the second page because it was a conversation. And I always, I am a big fan of espionage and clandestine operation and that kind of born identity kind of operations. And they have, I could have done amazing fiction films from what they told me.
Well, I'm curious, since one of your goals was to have these respected voices speak openly to the public, to the Israeli public, and you'd already sensed that when some of them had gone public in 2003 that Ariel Sharon had been moved. What were your expectations for the impact of the film in Israel, first of all, and how has it been received? Has it moved the conversation?
Look, I knew when I finished the interviews, as a documentary filmmaker, I have good sense for when the interviews is good and when the interview is not worth even the time to spend. And I felt after I finished, I started with the 5 and then I went to Yuval, I felt that I had dynamite in my hand. Not in terms of the story of the secrets that they told, but first of all, the way they spoke, as you said, the candidly and the open of how they spoke in the interviews, and then also their perspective on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So I knew that if I will not fail to take those long interviews and to kind of condense them into a 100-minute film, and I will manage to bring a visual impact which will be as good as what they say, then I will probably hit a chord. But you don't know. You don't really know until you finish. And the first time that I understood what I had in my hand was not, by the way, although the first time that it was shown was in the Jerusalem Film Festival, for me it was daunting because it was the first time that they've ever seen. Each one of them gave, as I said, long interviews, and they haven't seen anything. And yesterday I was with Carmi Gilon in Canada, and he was with me in a panel, and he said, he told that he forgot about me completely. I mean, I interviewed him in the middle of 2009, and all of a sudden, in the middle of 2012, I call him and I say, "Hello, Carmi, this is Dror, the film is finished." Who? Now he remembers me because he became a film star from that. But, and then at Telluride Film Festival in America, after the first screening, and there was silence in the crowd, and then and the next day, I was in my hotel was on the main road of Telluride, and I remember waking up at 7 o'clock in the morning with the loud noises of people speaking under my window. I opened the window and I saw a 3-block queue of people, freezing cold, waiting to go into the Gatekeepers, which was showing 2 hours before it was shown. So I understood that something, I hit a chord, a good chord, or I managed to bring something to the...
I guess before we talk about how you made a visually stunning film as well as through its content, I do want to have a little bit of a better sense of, since one of your goals, in a way, one of your strategies was to have this group of people speak candidly in a way that perhaps the Israeli public and certainly Americans had never heard, and nor would we expect our own FBI or CIA directors to be as openly critical, skeptical about 40 years of policy. I'm curious whether the film has been a political bombshell or whether people in Israel have nodded and said, yes, this reflects a certain kind of thinking that everyone, even insiders, are frustrated with the course of 40 years of occupation.
Look, the film created a huge storm in Israel, a huge storm. The debates and the amount of column writers around the film. By the way, one of your next speakers, Ari Shavit, also was speaking about it, and it created, and I think because for the first time 6 of them spoke, and in a way they kind of send the ending of the film a very clear message to the Israeli public, and which was my intention in a way, to put a mirror in front of the Israeli public and tell them, look how we look. This is what we did. This is the people that we sent in our name to fight and to maintain our way of life. And look what they did in our name. Look what they think about that. And look how we look. And look how we will look in the future if we will maintain that occupation. And we're not so... it created a huge shockwave.
And it's been praised here in the States as well, not just obviously by your film peers who...
By the way, the government didn't like... I mean, the Prime Minister of Israel doesn't like the film. I can tell you a nice story about it. You are shocked, huh? I can tell you a nice story about it. I met Avi Dichter, one of the heads of the Shin Bet, who were in Bibi's government, and I asked him, we went into the Veterans of the Intelligence screening, and we spoke together on the stage, and outside he told me that he asked Bibi whether he watched the film, and he said that Bibi was very angry. It was in the beginning of the release of the film, and he said, no, I'm not going to watch this film. It's causing Israel damage all around the world. I don't understand how you participated in that. And Avi told me that he said to Bibi, there is a saying in Arabic, if you put a pita bread behind you and the sun, it doesn't mean that the sun doesn't shine. So you better watch the film. I mean, it's there. At least you will know what they're speaking about.
That's wonderful. So the praise has crossed the waters as well to this country, and congratulations on last year's Oscar nomination. I'm wondering if you've felt pushback either in Israel, not just from the Prime Minister, but pushback from diaspora Jews or friends of Israel in the United States who may feel some of that concern about exposing, even by Shin Bet directors, some of the moral problems of the occupation. What has been?
Yeah, of course. Well, you know the Jews, especially the Jews in America. You know them better than me. I expected that. I expected that kind of. You don't wash your dirty laundry outside. It should be stay in house. But I must say that most of the Jews that I met, I would say 90%, were very, very favorable of the film and the message of the film. But I learned now that the Americans are very, very polite people. So you cannot really know if they mean that or they are just polite. But I must say that something that bothered me from the beginning concerning the Jews in America, and I felt that also in Australia. By the way, I traveled all around, and there is something, and excuse me if I will hurt someone, there is something which I feel I'm much more now in America, that the Jews in the diaspora kind of, something happened to them after the Second World War, after the Holocaust, which I think is the most profound experience of Jews, definitely in Israel, all over the world, which we said never again. After never, nothing like that will happen to us again. And the Jews in the diaspora, Israel is there is something sacred about Israel. And I support that completely. And Israel is there, and we have to protect it no matter what. And in my point of view, what I felt with Jewish people that I spoke here is that they don't distinguish between supporting Israel and being able to criticize a policy which they do not agree of the government of Israel. And there's a difference between supporting the state of Israel, and I support that and salute that everywhere. You should support the existence of the state of Israel, always. But if you think and feel that the policy of the government of Israel is endangering the existence of the state of Israel, and you should say that. You should not be afraid, because of the memory of the Holocaust, that we have to support Israel no matter what. You should not be afraid to express that criticism. I'm not saying be leftist or right. If you are, and believe me, I met some crazy Jews that think that Israel should be from Iraq until Egypt, including all the area around it. Okay, but support that. But you cannot support let's say in October 95, Prime Minister Rabin seek for peace and his way to go towards peace, and support a year after that Benjamin Netanyahu at his first term as Prime Minister. It doesn't work together. This is two different policies, and you should criticize the policy. And that's what I feel that the American Jews are afraid to do. Maybe I'm wrong. And I felt that the gatekeepers acted also as a release mechanism to those people who were afraid to express that kind of point of view. Well, if 6 heads of Shin Bet are saying that, we can say that as well.
Yes. Yes. So on behalf of all the folks who have felt it to be either dangerous or difficult to be critical, the Shin Bet directors deserve our thanks, and you do as well for bringing the points of view that sometimes are very difficult to express without that kind of authority that they claim. They speak a lot about strategy versus tactics in the film, and I want to turn to some of the strategy and tactics that you as a filmmaker use to bring this story forward. The fact is you set yourself a really difficult task. You want to make a film out of 6 talking heads. Really tough, really tough. And yet you've created an extremely compelling visual film, as well as simply a compelling set of arguments and conversations. So I thought what we could do, you employed a lot of visual strategies and tactics, and for the sake of the audience who's not here in the room, I want to show a brief clip, maybe just about 3 minutes. It's two scenes that will run back to back, which after we see them, I want you to kind of give us an anatomy of the filmmaking that you've done, because frankly, the people are talking about incidents and security matters for which either very little visual material exists or none, and you had to weave together a compelling visual way of telling those stories. So I just ask you who are here looking at the film to take a look at the different styles and techniques, the animations, and we'll see if Dror will reveal to us which of these are created, which of these are real, and to give us a sense of your filmmaking, your storytelling style visually. So why don't we roll the first 2 clips back to back.
מערכת השב"כ היא מערכת מאוד משומנת ומאוד מתוכננת ומאוד יעילה, כלומר עובדים בשיטה. אתה מקבל קודם כל שטח טריטוריאלי ואתה מתחיל ללמוד כפר, שביל, אם זה בסיורי שטח, אם זה בהמון רעיונות באלף עם אנשים שמגיעים בהמוניהם לממשל הצבאי. אתה יושב עם אנשים ושואל, תספר לי על הכפר, תספר לי על החמולות, תספר לי מי מספר תושבי הכפר, דרך החלוקה החמולתית, דרך איזה מוסדות יש בכפר. אתה מגיע בסופו של דבר בשירות לסימון מי אתה רוצה לגייס. אתה בסופו של דבר יודע שאתה רוצה את X, מכיוון שאתה מעריך שמעמדו של X, קשריו של X, היכולת שלו לחדור למקומות שאתה רוצה לפקח עליהם, היא כזאת שהוא הסוכן שאתה רוצה לגייס.
תאר לי בבקשה מה קורה באותו ערב. אתה מקבל טלפון ואומרים לך יש אירוע של חטיפת אוטובוס?
אני כבר לא זוכר. הייתי בחיפה בכלל.
כן,
אמרו לי שיש חטיפת אוטובוס, תבוא. אז באתי.
Let's talk about
you want me to reveal secrets now?
Yeah, yes, please.
You have to use moderate physical pressure now.
The first clip showed an astonishing variety of both animations, some snippets of archival footage, as well as photographs, digital manipulation. Talk us through how you developed some of these strategies.
Look, from the beginning, I knew that I would have problem with archive material, because, you know, normally the heads of the Shin Bet or the Shin Bet does not go with cinematographer behind their back shooting whatever they do. It's a secret service, and the word secret is very, very, they don't have their kind of. So I knew that I will have to create a visual language that I will be able to, it will be able to serve me throughout the film. And so I knew that if I will find the right archive for the big event, the Intifada, the demonstration against Rabin and all that, this I will have, but, or the postmass of after 1967, but everything, every time that the Shin Bet will speak about themselves and about incidents that are inside their system, nothing. You know, today the technology allows us to spend our horizon vision in terms of visuals. And I love CGI a lot, computer graphic animation. And today I think that the opportunity or the ability to create a realistic look in CGI is, people probably don't know, but almost all the film that you see, the realistic film, a lot of that is created in a CGI studio. It's much easier. You don't have to work with actors. You don't have to deal, you know, it's just a computer and you have to know how to light, and everything is under control. So we kind of devised, we built basically what we call the mechanism of Shin Bet, the file cabinets, the way that they look for people. And all of that was created in CGI, although I must admit that I have seen how it looks in my eyes, some of it. So it wasn't really, well, the file cabinet, you know, how did you have this huge archive? Definitely, I assume it was like that before the digital era where the computers are there.
Yes, as they say in the movies, it's inspired by true events. But,
exactly. Yes.
But you've created, I mean, for example, that long tracking shot of the rows and rows of file cabinets. This is
all recreated. All recreated. But by the way, all the data inside the files, I know the Israelis, and so all the data inside the files, in each of the files that is there, is completely accurate, even to the name of the grandson of the mother, which is inside that, the address and his social identity card. I was a bit German in that sense of, you know, very, those guys in Paris were crazy because I demanded so much for them. So that was one way, one of the techniques that we use in order to create what we call the inner Shin Bet mechanism.
Mm-hmm. And to the second clip, which was specifically this incident of the 300 bus, I imagine that there wasn't much in the way of moving footage and just a few photographs that you used. And yet you created a three-dimensional environment where there are camera moves, where you appear to give us a different point of view. I found it completely extraordinary, really, really brilliant, partly because as viewers, as moviegoers, we have become very spoiled by exactly the techniques that you've described being brought to bear in fiction films. And here you're taking some of those techniques and creating an expanded experience of a historical incident, which of course has its own manipulation and point of view to it. So I'm curious where you drew the line as to what you could kind of animate based on actual photographs and footage.
Look, at the end of the day, your task as a filmmaker is to give a feeling to the audience. And I felt, when I looked at the 300 line, I knew the pictures, especially those two pictures of those very live terrorists in the middle of two big guys. And the other photo is iconic in Israel. Definitely the second one is iconic in Israel culture. Almost everybody that knows about the Shin Bet and about this affair knows those pictures. But at the end of the day, you know, what can you do with pictures? You can either zoom in, pen right or pen left or tilt down, and that's boring. And I come from visuals. They mentioned that I was a cinematographer for a long time. I am motivated by visuals. Visuals is... I learned to do that by content also, but I'm motivated by visuals. And I wanted to tell a story inside that based on the real documents. And today, again, what we did, we took those photos and we put them on the computer in the space where they were, and we recreated all the environment. But I wanted that the audience will understand that it is based on a true. It's not something that I invented. And that was very clear, by the way, you hear that kind of click of and you understand that it's based on that. And it allowed people to understand how does cinematographer who are working on the ground in those events, and it was a tribute for me to those brave photographers whom, if there was not, like Avraham Shalom, if nobody would have seen that photo, it would have been, forgotten. Nobody would have known about those 2 terrorists that were killed. And I think that it was very important, even he acknowledged that it was revealed, although it ruined his life.
I also do want to give you tremendous kudos for your work as a cinematographer. That's where I first learned your name, because you shot some of Israel's great iconic scenes in fiction films. I still remember Ayelet Zur on a table in Desperado Square. These are iconic in a different way from some of the photographs that you've mentioned. So you seem to have captured these men and their stories at a moment when the prospect for a 2-state solution is not only dimming, but also has now been eclipsed by the world's attention on Iran. And you are not a foreign policy expert, nor are you here to answer questions that perhaps the Consul General, who's here in the audience, would by rights better answer. But I am curious if you can tell us if the mood that you experience as an Israeli citizen, as well as a storyteller, has shifted somehow about the negotiations for a peace with Palestinian neighbors when there's this kind of immediate, overwhelming interest in Iranian affairs.
Look, I will be very cautious now because the Consulate General is here, and he probably will report back to Israel. And since a lot of people in Israel, especially the Prime Minister, knows that I love him very much, so look. But I can. Yesterday, when I was with Carmi Gilon, who was asked this question, one of the former heads of Shin Bet, about Iran, and I agree completely with what he said, so I will lean on him.
Channel him for us for a moment.
I will lean on what he said, and I agree completely with what he said. Look, Netanyahu did an amazing thing. It's hard for me to acknowledge that, but he did an amazing thing. He brought to the attention of the world the Iranian nuclear bomb and the threat from that to the rest of the world. And rising up to the main agenda of the policymakers around the world. This he did very well. But I, and also, well, Carmi as well, I believe firmly in what Avraham Shalom said. When you speak, he finds out that you don't drink petrol, and I find out that he doesn't eat glass, and that is how things should be done. And this is what my firm belief, that what Obama achieved in terms of diplomacy, I hope that it will prevail, that maybe Iran will abolish her nuclear intention to go towards nuclear bomb. I'm not naive. I know that they want that, and I know that it will change strategically the whole region. But I think that diplomacy should, in our era, should try to solve problem. The easiest, and America have witnessed that dearly and paid dear price for that. The easiest way is to say, we don't speak, let's attack, without thinking. And the consequences of attacking Iran for Israel, in my point of view, may be dire. Israel can suffer a shell of thousands of rockets, not by the way of only from Iran, but from our nice neighbors in the Hezbollah and Hamas. And in my point of view, we should give diplomacy to try to solve that problem. Whether it will be solved, let's hope that yes, and let's hope that Obama says what he means and means what he says, that he will not allow Iran to have a nuclear bomb. And it was very difficult for me to acknowledge that something that Netanyahu did. I'm still suffering from that. But I want to continue.
You're going to retract it now.
No. No, because I think that what you mentioned, and I didn't address that, is very, very important. Look, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and this I come to the criticism which is easy for me for Netanyahu. The fact that the Prime Minister of Israel says that he is for a two-state solution, and I know from first-hand evidence that nothing is moving on the negotiation now. Nothing. It is stuck. Nothing is being agreed after 5 months of negotiation between Tzipi Livni and Saeb Arikat. And in my point of view, this is the greatest danger. Much more dangerous than the nuclear power of Iran. And I will explain why. First, let's address the Iranian thing. On what ground, if Israel will solve, I'm not saying that it's easy. Again, I'm a practical person and pragmatic. I'm not saying that it will be solved tomorrow. But if Israel would have meant really seriously that she is going for a two-state solution, as the Prime Minister is saying, and let's imagine, fantasize that it will be solved, on what ground will the Iranian have a basis to attack Israel if the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will be solved? We don't have any beef or quarrel with Iran on any other subject. They are like feeling that they are representing the Palestinian people. So that will abolish all the talking of Iran, in my point of view, about that kind of affair. And my fear is that in 5 months from now, if there will not be, and this is what I see is going, and not only me, nothing will come out of those 9-month labor, giving this child. I'm really, really afraid of the outcome of what will happen in 5 or 6 months from that.
Well, some of that pessimism, in a way, I hear you, in a way, echoing what some of your interviewees spoke of in The Gatekeepers. One of the more chilling moments is when, I think it was Avram Shalom says that he expects to see political assassinations happening around any kind of withdrawal from the West Bank. And I shuddered to think of that, and so the stakes now get higher and higher the more and more that this process either gets delayed or stalled, or where there's a kind of disjuncture between the rhetoric of the peace process and the reality on the ground. And I'm wondering if, in speaking with some of these 6 people, whether did any of them give you any sense of hope or optimism, or even just pragmatic progress on steps to take?
I think that everybody, even in this room, knows how the final agreement between Israel and the Palestinians will look like. I don't think that even Netanyahu knows that. The only thing that, in my point of view, that was the difference between Ariel Sharon and Yitzhak Rabin, because they stood up and they said, we are not concerned about the next 5 minutes. We want to look as leaders. Where do we see strategically Israel in 10, 20, 30 years from now? And this is what kind of moved them to acknowledge that the maintaining of the occupation is bad for, first and foremost, for the existence of the state of Israel. They were not concerned so much with the Palestinian welfare and well-being, with the existence of the state of Israel in that harsh environment that we are living in. And this is something that I don't see now, and this is why the gatekeepers, the heads of the Shin Bet, are really, really concerned. Because at the end of the day, this is the environment where we live. And if nothing will be done, the future is grim. And this is what they say. And this is what they are acting, or why they came to speak in the Gatekeepers.
One of the directors quotes the 18th century tactician, Karl von Clausewitz.
Who should have been Jew.
Who should have been a Jew. Yeah. As he says, we haven't yet found his roots, his Jewish roots.
Probably there's a grandmother there.
But the quote that he gives, or paraphrases, is victory is the creation
Of a better political
reality. And on the other hand, you have one of your interviewees quoting a Palestinian negotiator saying at that time, among Palestinians, victory is to see you suffer.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, for you, looking at the big picture, what does victory look like when you have two entrenched parties?
It's a tough question, and what Ami Ayalon said, or he asked me before, it's not in the movie, you are an Israeli, what is a victory for you? And look, I can tell you that I've always debated with my father. Moses, when he went out of Egypt, they walked for 40 years. In 40 years, he could have reached Canada or North Europe. Why did he settle in the Middle? I mean, in this is the land of milk and honey. Nothing is there. The problem is that this is where we live. Yeah, we are in the land of milk and honey. We are still looking for the honey. The milk is not found yet. My problem is that you have to understand that there is another side, and we have to see the other side. We cannot really I know that some politicians would like to get rid of the Palestinians. The Palestinians are there, and they have around 2.5, 3 million Palestinians now in the West Bank and Gaza. And they feel justified. I don't want to say what I think, but they feel that we came after the Holocaust into their land and we took it from them. This is their point of view. And unless we acknowledge that this is what they see, I don't have that, I don't accept that. But this is how they see the things. And in a way, we need to compromise at the end of the day. It will have to be a compromise. I mean, to see Netanyahu speaking about a two-state solution, this guy again, and Ariel Sharon speaking about, by the way, look at all the 6 prime ministers that were after Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated. All of them agreed to a two-state solution. All of them saying that they are working very, very hard for that. It doesn't work in a way. I don't understand. Maybe there is definitely a guilt in the Palestinian side, not only in the Israelis. But I see that Abu Mazen is saying that he is willing to come back to Tzfat, his hometown, as a tourist, which basically he says in his words, I'm abolishing the right of return. So as I said, all the world knows what the final status between the Israelis and the Palestinians will look like. Jerusalem will be divided, I think, to 2 capitals. No right of return, maybe small margin of people. I am not agreeing to that, and definitely I think much lefter than me, and I'm not left. I'm sorry, I'm not left. I always say I'm the center, but the country has moved to the right, which I am now considered a very, big leftist. I am, if you see what I get, emails or Facebook, that wishes to my family and me after the Gatekeepers. So the thing is, where do we want strategically to look at Israel? And now, there is now new voices in the Israeli arena, which are saying there should be a one state. Now, in my point of view, one state will mean 2 things, and there is no third. One, Israel will be an apartheid state, 2 to 3 million Palestinians without the right to vote. This is what those ultra-Orthodox religious want. And as an apartheid state, which will be at the height of how South Africa was between in the end of the 70s and the middle of the 80s, outcasted all around the world. Nobody wants a diplomatic relation. That's a very, very heavy burden.
That's a dire scenario. Yes.
Dire scenario. And the other one is that you will give a right to vote to all the Palestinians, and there might be 50 to 60 members of the Knesset which will be Palestinians. So there might be a Palestinian prime minister as well. And that will mean, in my point of view, the end of the state of Israel as a Jewish democratic state, which is very important for me. And I think to every Jew, it should be very, very important that Israel will maintain the identity of a Jewish state because of how I started, because of what happened in the Holocaust. A democratic and a Jewish state. And that cannot be in a one-state solution.
So, with those tough scenarios out there, we're not expecting you to solve that. I don't know if there are any solvers in this audience, but I know that there are a lot of questioners and people who may want to respond and ask Dror follow-ups on the film or your own responses. And so maybe we can have the house lights up and to seek out Stephanie with a mic and ask away. Prove ourselves to be the questioning audience that I know you are.
And just one reminder, if you have a slip that you want to fill out and you want to get in on the drawing, please get them to an usher. You can hand them to me or to an usher. Okay, first question right here in the front.
I just couldn't help, but I had to ask you this question. How is it that you are still alive today when you walk around in Israel? I'm serious, because I know there are elements on the far right and the very religious who would find that absolutely repulsive.
I'm not that important. Seriously, I'm not. Look, I am sitting on a very, very safe high ground. In front of me, there are 6 very, very tough people, which, 6 heads of the Israeli Secret Service are saying those words. I am not the messenger. I was, I gave them.
Give them a platform, yes.
Yeah, I gave them a platform and go argue with 6 heads of the Israeli Secret Service who are saying that therefore a 2-state solution, enough of the occupation, go do that. So again, there were a lot of accusation towards me that I kind of cherry-picked what I wanted from the long interviews with them, and I created the essence of the film in the editing room. There was a nice incident where the defense minister of Israel, now Moshe Boogie Ya'alon, was interviewed about the Gatekeepers, and he was asked if he's seen the film, and he said, yes, I've watched the film. Consul General, don't say it to him. And and he said, yes, I've watched the film, and I think that the director took from very long interviews, I know those people, took from very long interviews what he wanted to create his message. So, nice thing that happened, that immediately after that, one of them called the radio, and he was brought immediately to air, and he said, Mr. Defense Minister, I'm sorry to tell you that we are all standing behind the film, and you have to deal with the message, not with the messenger. And to think that I, Dror Moreh, as much as I respect myself, will change the essence of 6 heads of Shin Bet, and they will sit and they will say, yes, he didn't, we are, it's really ridiculous to think that I changed what they said, and they will sit idle and will not comment on that or whatever. So I'm not really afraid. But what you mentioned, that Carmi Gilon said that there might be another political assassination, I'm sure that this is right. I know how the extreme right, by the way, Avi Dichter, the heads of Shin Bet, said that during the disengagement, the threat to the life of Sharon were much more severe and intense than on the threat on the eve of the murder of Rabin from the extreme right wing. There is 2 ways, and it is in the 5th chapter of the Gatekeepers, which was broadcasted in Israel, that the extreme right knows and thinks that he can stop any kind of movements towards peace. Either blow up the Dome of the Rock, and there were plans to do that before the disengagement, a drone, which they wanted to put explosive and to fly into the Dome of the Rock, and a missile, which they wanted to shoot into the Dome of the Rock. It was stopped by the Shin Bet, and the threat to Sharon's life, as I said. So, but since we have experienced already a political murder, they put a lot of security around Sharon during that time.
Okay, next question on this side.
You complimented Bibi for bringing the issue of the Iranian nuclear weapon to
Did
the
I?
world's attention. Yeah, well, you tried not to, but I guess the other side of the coin, though, is do you or do other people in Israel feel that there is a kind of a more jaundiced view of what Netanyahu is doing by drawing all this attention to Iran, that's taking the attention away from the Palestinian issue so that they can continue to delay and not take action on this indefinitely?
Look, I don't like to speak as a representative of the Israeli people because I'm not. And Israel, I said that Israel is, there is 7 different Israels, and I belong to one of those 7 Israels. In my point of view, definitely I think that what Bibi did in terms of focusing the attention on the nuclear plan of Iran is commendable, but I think that he uses, I agree with you completely, that he uses that in a way to shift the attention from the not going forward with the Israeli-Palestinian negotiation. And I think that the fact that America now headed the international community, the 6th superpower, reached a deal with Iran now, which gives now, let's say, 6 months or 8 months to negotiation on the final agreement, puts Israel and Bibi, especially in his policy, on a corner, because now the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will have to be also a focus of attention. And as I said previously, I don't believe that from those 2 goats a milk will come at the end of the process.
The next question is on your right. Have you received any feedback from the 6 heads of Shin Bet on the documentary?
Of course.
And what is that feedback?
They are standing firmly behind it. Of course, they are not all of them the same, but they are very happy, proud. Well, some of them more than others, but very happy and proud participating in the movie and the impact of the movie and the fact that the movie created such a storm. They regretted that they couldn't join me during the Academy Award to see all those stars. By the way, I had a dream, my dream was that I am walking with a black suit and all 6 of them, like in Tarantino's movie, walking behind me, into the Academy Award. Regrettably, I didn't manage to do that.
I am curious, though. There seems to be maybe not the floodgates have opened in terms of people coming forward, but when I think of Renan Alexandrovich's film, The Law in These Parts, in which you have judges being very open about the sort of the law that justifies the occupation, are you finding that your film has emboldened some other leaders, whether they are security folks or politicians or others, to be more candid, or maybe to seek the limelight, or to say, I'm never opening my mouth again because it's going to be on the Oscars?
I don't know. Maybe my next project will be with the heads of the Mossad, and maybe I will manage. I think that the heads of the Shin Bet came because they are worried. They are worried about the outcome of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. They are worried of the implication of that on the Israeli public. And they are worried mostly because they feel that the windows of opportunity to solve the problem is closing fast. And by closing fast, I mean, there is a concept which is called the point of no return. The point of no return is something that when you are flying, you need to have enough fuel to go back where you came out. In the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, there is no distinct point where, from that point on, that in contrast to them, feel that we have passed that point, regrettably. I don't see any Israeli leader, definitely not the current one, who can bear on his shoulder the evacuation of 100, let's say, on the optimistic point, 150,000 settlers, some of them from Hebron, Bet El, and this is my pessimistic kind of point of view. The gatekeepers differ from me. They feel that it is very close to the point of no return, but they say that if they will come or there will be a great leader, that the people will follow and it can be done. When I ask them, do they see a leader like that in the horizon? They don't, but they are more optimistic than me.
Okay, next question on this side.
Hi, I'm told that within the next decade, the religious people in Israel will be the majority. What will be the state of Israel in terms of a democracy or not if there is a majority of religious people?
It's very easy to answer. There won't be a democracy in Israel if there will be the majority. Very easy. You see that? Look, again, I'm representing myself now. I'm not representing the Israelis and the gatekeepers in what I'm saying. I am very, very afraid for the democracy in Israel now. I'm concerned. I feel that Israel is moving in a huge leap towards great danger to the existence of democracy. The gatekeepers of democracy in Israel are in a state of tectonic changes. One of them, the media, is changing rapidly. I don't know if you know, there is a famous Jewish rich man who bought a newspaper in Israel for Netanyahu. He tried also to mingle with the elections here in America.
Sheldon Adelson.
Yeah, Sheldon Adelson. The television also is under threat. The channels are always being threatened to be closed not because of Netanyahu, but because of the economics. So the diversity of opinion is getting lower and lower. The other gatekeepers of democracy, the Supreme Court, is being challenged day in and day out by the Knesset. There is legislators who are now trying to minimize, to sabotage the work of the Supreme Court in Israel. And this is, in my point of view, grave danger to the democracy in Israel. Having, and you heard that from them as well, the amount of racism that you see in the Israeli society, especially amongst the young ones, are alarming. And I'm not optimistic. And demography speaks. Definitely demography speaks. You know, I've been the last 2 weeks, all around the state. The amount of good, amazing Israelis that has left Israel and that living now here, because they don't see in Israel a place where they can strive, is shocking to me, was shocking. And I felt that they are kind of uprooted. They feel that they hear all the time the Israeli radio, they are all the time interested in the Israeli news, what goes on in Israel, but they left because they feel that they cannot live there, economically, whatever. And this is a phenomenon that is growing now. So,
Dror, you told me backstage that you have 2 kids right now. They're both serving in the military. What do they think about their future in Israel? You are going to be working on your next project here in the States. I'm not saying you're emigrating, but what from their standpoint, are they in for the long haul as Israelis?
Look. One of the reasons that I did the Gatekeepers, for me, a personal reason, was because of my trying to change Israel for their future, or to create a change in Israel for the fact that my kids could live in Israel, which I dream that Israel will be, as we always dream. My birthday is on the 4th of November.
Mazal tov.
It was.
It was.
On the 4th of November 1995, I was on the square with who was my wife, now my ex-wife, filmmakers have problem with maintaining long relationship. And we were there during the speeches, and then we went to a restaurant. And I remember saying to her, I had Amnon and Mika, my kids were very young then, babies, saying to her that I'm so happy that for the first time there is a chance, because of Rabin, that they might grow up to a different reality. And then someone in the restaurant got a beeper. He rose up, he went completely white, pale, and he said, he probably was a surgeon in Ichilov, and he said, they shot Rabin. I have to run to the hospital. And from that moment on, for me, everything changed. And I hoped that when Mika and Amnon, or Amnon and Mika will grow up and go to the army, the reality will change. Regrettably, it didn't. Amnon now is serving in the army, and Mika as well. Amnon, to my despair, because he didn't want to go to a combatant unit, the army put him in the roadblocks, in the checkpoints. And this is what he does. I speak to him almost every 2 or 3rd day, and he says to me, Dad, it's horrible. What we are doing here is horrible. I understand why I'm here. I understand the necessity of that. But the fact that I, a 19-year-old boy, can put an old man and let him wait outside for a few hours because I suspect that there's something wrong with him, and I can detain, and I have the power to do that, and I see how they hate me. I detest that. I don't like that. And I am trying to speak to him all the time when he comes, and to present to him dilemmas, human dilemmas that he might face. But this is what he does. Mika is also in the army now, in a course, intelligence course. What do they see the future? I have to tell you the truth. I am very pessimistic about whether Israel can really live up to be and to maintain being a Jewish democratic state as I want it to be, vibrant and colorful and with all those. Sorry to be so pessimistic.
Wow, I kind of wanted to end on something more cheery.
So let's speak on my...
Yeah, well, the fact is you are continuing to make work, some of it in Israel and some of it here in the US. I guess you're going back to fiction.
I will look, the Gatekeeper functioned for me as a gate opener, especially here in America. I mean, the amount of praises that I got from my idols in the American film industry, like Steven Spielberg, like Catherine Bigelow, like many others, is heartwarming. And I'm going to do some things here in the near or soon future. If
that is the optimistic note on which we should end, at least it's going to an extremely deserving filmmaker. Dror Moreh, thank you.
Thank you.
Please join Dror in the lobby for a reception afterwards. Thank you so much, Dror.
Thank you very much.